All right, we've looked at addition, subtraction, and multiplication with decimals. Now we're going to take a look at division. Remember, when we do a division problem, we set it up a little bit more differently than the rest. So, for example, let's take a look at 5.39 divided by negative 1.1. Now, the first thing to recognize is that a positive divided by a negative is going to be negative. So we know the answer is going to be negative, so we can ignore that negative for now. Let's set up the division. We know that the first number goes on the inside, 5.39, and then the other number goes on the outside, in this case 1.1. We do not put negative signs into the division algorithm, into all of this process. We just deal with negative signs at the very end. Now here we've set it up, and there's an important rule that we need to follow. When we perform a division, the divisor, which is the number over here, it has to be a whole number for this process to work. And in this case, we can see that it's not. It's 1.1. There is a method that we can use to take care of this. We move the decimal point to the right so that that is no longer a decimal, so that it's a whole number. If we move it to the right one place, it becomes 11. But then we have to move the decimal on the inside the same number of places. And once we do that, that's where the decimal point is going to go in the answer. So we've got this quick thing that we need to do with the decimal points. And then once we've done that, we can move on just like we had before. So we're looking at 11 now. 11 doesn't go into 5, but it does go into 53. It goes into 53 4 times. Then we multiply. 4 times 11 is 44. And we subtract. 53 minus 44 is 9. Next, we bring down the next digit, which is 9, and we ask ourselves, how many times does 11 go into 99? It goes in 9 times, so we put a 9 up there. 9 times 11 is 99. When we subtract, we've got 0. There's no remainder there. There's nothing else we need to do, so we put that 4.9 in our answer. We remember that it's negative, and then we end up with negative 4.9. All right, let's take a look at 2 more problems. Let's look at negative 6.386 divided by negative 3.1. This is a different way of expressing division. We're expressing it as a fraction here, but it's still a division problem. All right, first I want to point out that a negative divided by a negative is going to be positive. So those negatives are going to cancel out. We can ignore them. And we're going to set up our division problem. The numerator, the number in the top, 6.386, is going to be the one that goes on the inside. And then the denominator, the number on the bottom, is what goes on the outside. Now let's go and deal with this decimal point. We know that the divisor, the number on the left, has to be a whole number. It's not right now, it's 3.1. So to make it a whole number, we need to move that decimal point over one place. So let's do that. But then we have to move the decimal point in the other number over one place. And then we're going to move it up, and that's where it goes in our answer. And once we've done that, we can just do the division ignoring the decimal points. So if we look at 31, it doesn't go into 6, but it does go into 63. It goes into 63 twice. So I'm going to put a 2 up here. 2 times 31 is 62. We subtract. 63 minus 62 is 1. Then we bring down the 8. 31 does not go into 18. It's not big enough. It goes in 0 times. And we're going to need to write a 0 here as a placeholder to allow us to bring down that 6. Now we can ask ourselves, how many times does 31 go into 186? Well, 30 goes into 186 times, so it's probably going to be 6. We put our 6 up there. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. When we subtract, we're left with 0. So we know that 2.06 is our final answer because we said it was going to be positive. So there we are. We're going to do one more now. I want to take a look at negative 7.21 divided by 1.4. Now we know a negative divided by a positive is going to be a negative, so we can write that negative in there right away. And let's set up our problem now. We've got 7.21 goes on the inside, 1.4 goes over there. Now again, we have to move the decimal points over one place, and then we can move it up into the answer. And once we've done that, we're ready to do our dividing. 14 does not go into 7, but it does go into 72 5 times. 5 times 14 is 70. When we subtract, we get 2. We bring down the 1. 14 goes into 21 one time. So then we multiply. 1 times 14 is 14. When we subtract, we're left with 7. Now at this point, we have a remainder. We need to keep going. There's no more digits here, but we can put in a 0 without changing the value of that quantity. We can always put a 0 at the very end on the right-hand side of a decimal point without changing any values. And that allows us to bring down this 0. 14 goes into 75 times. 14 times 5 is 70. When we subtract, we're left with 0. And so our final answer ends up being negative 5.15. Now, some of you may feel really comfortable with this. Others may need a little bit more help. So if you need to look at some more worked out examples, you can click on the link below, and that will take you to more videos of worked out examples so that you can watch them at your own pace.